Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel. My name is Molly Boygon. I'm a tech and innovation reporter at Automotive News. You can read my work on autonews.com. As you all know, SDVs are a huge buzzword here at the show and beyond, but the industry broadly agrees that there are no true SDVs on the market in the US today. We're looking forward to a day when new functionality can be added seamlessly over the air, and when there's an open developer ecosystem also to add new capabilities. While that's technically feasible, it requires new ways of thinking and conducting business that have yet to materialize. So hard at work on this problem are the people on the stage with me right now. Thomas and Stefan, I'll have them introduce themselves.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Molly, for the nice introduction. My name is Thomas Irawan. I'm the CEO of ETAS, and I'm very happy to be here on stage discussing with you about the software-defined reality and also how we are contributing to that. So as I said, working for ETAS, ETAS is specialized in, I would say, rather some hidden parts of the software-defined vehicle stack. For example, the middleware. I don't know how familiar you are with middleware, but middleware is something like a translator in a multilingual team. And why do we need that? Because, as you said, digitalization will bring more and more cool features in the car, which is nice for the end users because we get cool features, nice features, but it adds a lot of complexity for the OEMs, for the manufacturers, cost and complexity. And here middleware comes into play to ensure really a smooth communication of everything in the car, hardware, software. And with it, we reduce complexity and also cut down development cost.
Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah, my name is Stefan Böckel. I'm the region president for our cross-domain computing division at Bosch, basically taking care of all the aspects from hardware and software in the whole SDV, covering topics like ADAS, autonomous driving, level 2 all the way up to level 4, all the cockpit technologies, zone modules, so all the fun stuff, feature functions, and the hardware below.
Thank you, Stefan. Thomas, let's start with you. What is the current status of the software-defined vehicle?
There is not the status of the software-defined vehicle, right? Currently, I would say in the industry, you could talk about the broad distribution of different kinds of maturities of all the different players in this ecosystem, in this industry. But what we see is, or to make it more black and white and a little bit more simplified, let's talk about the group who is, from my point of view, pretty much ahead of the transformation curve. So there are some challengers and also a lot of COEMs specifically, which are pretty ahead in this transformation. From my point of view, because they focus a lot on user experience, they focus a lot on the features their end customers really want. And with that, obviously, they bring a lot of innovative cars for a pretty much affordable price to the street already. And what is behind, from my point of view, is one key theme, which is speed. And how that comes, they speed up their software development by using existing software. So they not reinvent the wheel over and over again. They use existing software specifically for the non-differentiating parts, platforms in the vehicle, and by that speed up innovation cycles. And they also have pretty agile organizations. They can quickly adapt, and they go to centralized architectures and vertical integration.
So it sounds like sort of a mixed bag across the globe with some factors that encourage faster growth and faster SDV growth. Stefan, what about you?
Yeah, you mentioned a Chinese OEM. To add another one, we have, of course, Tesla as one of the trailblazers in the SDV market, going first into a real flexible architecture. And then we have our Western customers, which are all in a very transitional phase. Of course, also the challenge is a different one. If you look in the Chinese OEM market as well as for Tesla, there's a whole different legacy behind way more widespread portfolio you have to deal with from an entry segment all the way to a high segment from different trim levels. So the transition from a classic distributed system into a software-defined architecture is, of course, also a different challenge for those type of OEMs. And all of them are in their journey. A lot of that was linked also with the transition to battery electric vehicles, not necessarily because it's technologically linked, but it was timing-wise linked. So those new cars were foreseen to come with the software-defined architecture. Now the market behaved differently in the battery vehicles, so therefore we see also a lot of shifts and revamping the architecture. So it's a very big transition, which takes quite some time.
Yes, and you mentioned Tesla in the American market leading on some of that more flexible architecture. It seems to me that that company has also sort of set some tone and some consumer expectations for what an SDV may be able to do. Can you talk a little bit more about the consumer expectations for software-defined vehicles?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's relatively simple. And what, 5-6 years ago, we talked about a smartphone on wheels, right? That was the first term looking into that direction. You basically want to have a product which is always up to date. Right? The smartphone defines how we live, what we are used to, and we have the same expectations to a car. And in general, it's maybe in the first glance a simple thing. Okay, make it updatable, right? All the new cars are already connected. Why can't you just easy update and download new feature and functions? But if you look into the details, a smartphone is a really different world than a vehicle. As simple as starting from a lifetime perspective. We are all used to, let's be honest, 2-3 years maximum, you replace your smartphone. A car has to live 10, 15 years. And if you want to foresee what you need in 10, 15 years from memory, from compute power, from base technology to enable features, you don't even know what it is. And that's the challenge. You don't know the feature you want to launch in 5 years or in 7 years, but you have to prepare now. Therefore, it is a completely different challenge, but the expectation is exactly like that.
Right. It would be nice in this area of the automotive industry, as in every area, to have a crystal ball.
We would love to have that.
Thomas, what about you?
Yeah, let me add to that, because I can build on a lot of things you said. First of all, I also use the smartphone on wheel buzzword in many talks, but I would like to underline a smartphone is something different, and a car is not a smartphone. We're talking here about automotive. We're talking about safety, security, automotive grade. Regarding the consumer expectations, fully agree. So expectation is to have more personalized, more automated, connected, more electrified cars and so on. Beside that, we see meanwhile that also consumers would like to see more remote maintenance capabilities. This is also like in a smartphone, because you don't want to go with your smartphone if you have an iOS or Android bug fix, critical bug fix, or you don't want to go to the dealer, right? So you just wait overnight, update, and then it's fine. You even don't recognize it. So same expectation users have with regards to remote capabilities, remote maintenance capabilities. And I think for OEMs, that can be really also a value-added feature. But for that one, they need to step up a little bit the game in cybersecurity, which is oftentimes neglected, because you need a secure end-to-end line from the car to the service center to ensure not only data privacy, but really ensure secure communication.
I think you touched on some of this when you were talking about safety and cybersecurity requirements and some of the, just harder requirements involved in the world of automotive. But can you talk a little bit about some of the technical challenges with consolidating and making more flexible that SDV architecture?
Sure. So there are a lot of challenges. And by the way, they are not only technical. But to make it a little bit simple, I would talk about 2 clusters of challenges. So the first one is a technical cluster, because, and that's just a matter of fact, most of the companies, most of the OEMs have legacy systems. And what's the problem with the legacy systems? If you have legacy systems, so older systems, they have typically outdated architectures. And it's pretty difficult with outdated architectures to handle the complexity of modern software. And outdated architectures it's also pretty difficult to integrate new technology. It's at least very inefficient in outdated architectures. Moreover, outdated architectures sometimes lead to fragmented software environments. And fragmentation, again, leads also to many problems. It leads to the fact that your components cannot communicate in the car, software components, hardware components, smoothly with each other. Fragmentation leads to interruption of operation, interruption of your iterative and fast development cycles. And we urgently need for the SDV the fast iterative development cycles. And last but not least, it's also fragmentation leads to the raise of maintenance costs and problems with updates, because if you change one part in such a system, it might affect other parts, and you have sometimes uncontrolled side effects, and that really leads to update issues.
Yes.
Sorry, the second cluster, that was only the first technical cluster. The second cluster is very important for me because it's a non-technical challenge. It's about organization. And if I talk about organization, I not mean only the organizational structure. It's about organization and the related processes, development processes, software development processes, quality processes. And no wonder, because most of our traditional companies, and it's not only for manufacturers, it's also for tiers, they used to have a hardware-centric organization, including their processes. So in the past, they built around their expertise and supply chains around hardware-centric organizations and around the manufacturing and design processes from the past. And what we urgently need for the SDV is really the shift from this kind of linear development stream, which we know from the hardware world, towards a real agile, iterative approach, continuous integration, continuous deployment, and also kind of culture, which is really fostering innovation.
Yes, and we'll definitely talk a little bit more about those organizational challenges in a bit, and I'll just ask you to turn back to the technical challenges for a moment. What are those in addition to the ones that Thomas said?
Yeah, to build on what you said, one big piece in an SDV is the aim that you want to have a continuous software development. Right? If you look back in how cockpit computers or ADAS computers or similar were done in the past, you were looking at your next generation of vehicles, you thought about what you want to have from a feature set, you developed it together with a tier one typically, you launched it into multiple cars, and then the next generation came and you said, all right, clean slate, what's next? And you started all over. That is, of course, a massive money invest every generation of cars. So you want to get out of that. You want to do a continuous software development stream. So that means I develop it once and continuously improve it generation over generation. Not only single car lines, but generations of cars. So if you want to do that, now you need to, of course, find a way, how do I manage that even though I want to have this continuously done, that I don't have a kind of a lock-in effect, that I only can work with that one person because I cannot hand over. And the solution to that right now for a lot of OEMs is I do it in-house. So if I do that in-house, now I need to go sure that my effort isn't too big if my hardware changes all the time. But you have also generational updates. SoCs are updating, memories are updating, safety, security standards are updating. So now you say, all right, then I do that as well as myself. Right? And now I do everything myself. The problem with that is, it's a lot of work to do, but okay, fine, but it's a huge investment. And all of that money flows into purely enabling you to have a software-defined vehicle. That doesn't give you any money yet. Mm-hmm. Just having an SDV gives you nothing. What you do out of it, that is where then the interesting part is, that this is where you differentiate. So right now, the automotive industry is investing 80% of their time, capacity, and money into just having it. 20% into goes, what do I do with it? And this is where we have to find different solutions where this enabling piece, this is as an industry where we need to create standards, standardization, common use of tools, just to enabling it, and the OEM can focus on making something special out of it.
Yes, and when I hear you both talking about this, it seems that the technological and the organizational are so intertwined, because to build that agility requires just a different way of thinking. And a lot of organizations can be stuck in this kind of legacy sort of attitude. So let's actually talk a little bit more about what the major business model challenges are to make the mass market SDV a reality. And Stefan, let's start with you.
Yeah, I already started talking about it, right? It's this, what we see alongside with SDV is this big shift from a classic, me as OEM specify a system, I give it to a supplier, I bring all the systems together, and I'm, let's say, a holistic system integrator, right, on a car level. And this is shifting a lot into a lot of in-house. And we have a lot of CEOs talking about, like, how do I want to manage and transition from where I'm at today with my 90 to 100 ECUs, all have different software from different suppliers. How do I want to bring that on a central or more centralized architecture if I don't own all that code? I don't even understand all that code, and that is true. So this transition is really difficult to manage for the OEM. And maybe there is also this phase we are in right now. Maybe there is also a certain need to bring that in-house, to bring it together, to make the transition. But from the midterm, specialization is never the most efficient way. If you look into other industries, if it's a cell phone industry, it's a server industry. If you go in a cloud provider, in a server farm, it all looks the same. They all look the same, right? Highly standardized. You have your racks, you have your blades, you have the base software, because this is not differentiating. What differentiates a successful cloud provider, which is also heavy compute, right? More or less the same thing, is what they have running on their cloud as services. It's not just having a cloud. And so this will be the next transition we are seeing after, even though delayed, rollout of this generation of SDV, we will see a strong standardization and more sharing of the one-time efforts.
Thomas, how are you thinking about that make versus buy equation? Because if you're an automaker, I think, as Stefan outlined, there appear to be pros and cons for both.
Yeah, of course. So the make or buy discussion is always an interesting one. I think several years ago, there was, like 10 years ago, there was a lot of insourcing. Most of the OEMs try to do everything in-house, try to avoid lock-ins, try to avoid reliance on suppliers. And most of them went through a painful learning curve and realizing that, they need to spend their time and scarce resources rather better on their differentiating features, really what the end user wants, instead of spending the time and building again and again platforms which are really not differentiating anymore. Yeah. On the other hand side, I think it's very important to make the car affordable, that you have a right balance between technological advancement and affordability of the car. And here I think there are good ways to do that. For example, within the open source community, where you can have a shared problem solving, can share tools, can share stacks, which are non-differentiating mainly, to speed up your own development and also reduce risk and also investments.
Before we move on, we both talked mostly about the business model currently between an OEM and a tier one or the supply chain in general. We see also a big shift in the business model between the OEM and the end customer. Because if you have a true SDV, right, updatable, where you bring new features over the whole life of the car, it means you have to prepare the car upfront to do so. And it doesn't help to be updatable, but then you have no memory in the car to put any feature in there. So that means at the time of purchase or of sale of the car, you have a lot of performance in there, which at this given point in time is not even used. And that performance costs money. So you have to put that in the car and then find a business model with your end customers that over these updates, over the future, over new features, to make money to recoup the invest. And this is in a certain sense a bet on the future, and largely different than the business model today, where we are still like, if you see the commercials, it's still like, what's the lowest price ticket for my new car when I launch it? You won't achieve the lowest price ticket of a car when you have to put tech in, which you use later. So there's also a big transition between the business model of the OEM and the end customer.
Yeah. And maybe also to add again to the business model question, because we did not talk so much now about what you really need to enable those kind of software-driven business models. First of all, you need also a smooth middleware, because with that, the developer can really focus on developing nice services and features for the end user. And with that, you enable software-driven business models. Second, I think we did not talk about data. There's a huge challenge of all the data in the car, and we did not make use out of it enough from my point of view. So there are a lot of data about the driver behavior, about the vehicle performance. Measuring this data, for example, in the middleware, using it to improve existing services or build new services on top of it, new business models, new revenue streams, is also something which we need to focus on, I think.
It's interesting because I think with both of these, there is a bit of a consumer attitude adjustment that probably needs to happen. You have the infamous heated seats example for an automaker that shall remain nameless, You have the infamous data sharing with data brokers example for another automaker that shall remain nameless. And even though, the use of driver data to enhance middleware is not quite the same thing, you do have, I think, a shifted attitude that's required. How should companies be thinking about that? Are consumers really ready for that? Stefan, let's start with you.
I think consumers are ready if it's done the right way, and that's the key. I mean, data privacy is extremely important, but also if you compare it back to the smartphone, when did the world of feature and function exploded? That's when the App Store opened up for third-party developers. This is where you will suddenly increase the creativity and the IP power to the whole world, right? However great your company is, you're always limited in your own how much creative ideas you can have. So opening that up, that is the kicker, and that will be the same thing in an SDV. Now, that does not mean that you have to send all personal data unprotected to the world. There's a lot of possibilities to unpersonalize data, to give the end customer the choice where to share. You saw, again, back to the smartphone, there's a lot of movement into I'm the owner of my data, I decide when and whom I want to give it or not. But if the end customer sees that, first of all, it's safe and they get a true value out of it, we see it today. You're absolutely happy to share your data under those circumstances, not just flat out to anybody. Yeah.
Yes, Thomas, do you agree?
Yes, fully agree, and would like to add, I like your example with the App Store exploding. I think this is a very interesting topic because some years ago I read an automotive study that point in time, 2-3 years ago, there were around 60 automotive OS variants or versions existing on the market in parallel. And automotive is a very small ecosystem, by the way, compared to the smartphone, like with 2 or 3 billion devices or 4 or 5 billion devices per OS, an Android or an iOS. It's a relatively small ecosystem what we have in automotive, which leads to the conclusion that we need to really focus on only the differentiating parts and not the non-differentiating parts. And then this ecosystem can also, within this ecosystem, we can also scale better because then we take care all the nice features, the apps, like in the App Store example, that will then explode. But the layer below, which are non-differentiating, I think we should find a collaborative way, or at least most OEMs should rely more on the ecosystem partners to free up their resources to really do what the end user expects.
Yeah, because what iOS and Android made so great and successful and ultimately dominating is not the OS. It's the ecosystem based on the OS, right? And this is what we have to build, and you cannot build 60 ecosystems for a way smaller market.
What, aside from the focus on sort of the right part of the stack to standardize, and then focusing on differentiating in other areas, makes a collaboration successful in this area? What is required for a successful collaboration that will build the parts of the stack that we need for the SDV?
I keep it very short, and then you can go into detail. If it's not differentiating, standardize and share the effort. As simple as that. It's not worth to put money into things which the end customer wouldn't ever see.
There you go.
Fully agree. And for that, you need a different mindset for collaboration. I think in this industry, in the automotive industry, we're used to compete so heavily with each other. That we are really trying to do everything by ourselves. So if we open up a little bit, collaborating in that way that everyone is doing what he or she can do best, then together it would make the overall ecosystem and the SDV overall more affordable. But for that, we need also collaboration concept because we know due to competition and so on, it's not so easy. And again, I would like to pitch the idea of open source community. That does not mean that we do everything in open source, but there are specific standardized platforms, standard components, which we can do in open source, because that would be a safe space to collaborate together, where everyone can bring in what he can do best, and then the entire industry would benefit out of it.
Yes, and I think that the affordability piece is so important for that. I think, as you say, sometimes the industry's impulse is to turn inward and really just focus on whatever they individually have going on and try and solve this price problem by themselves. And in reality, the standardization of different layers of the stack is probably the way.
And by the way, it's already existing, or it's already starting. Yeah, I would like to advertise a little bit the SDV Eclipse Working Group, which, by the way, we as ETAS together with Microsoft set it up some years ago. And this is the strongest growing open source community in the automotive. Cross industry, cross companies, there are tiers, OEMs, software tiers, tech players. They are all involved. Everyone is contributing and collaborating really on, for example, currently on an SDV stack. So everyone who is interested to join, look on the Eclipse SDV Working Group webpage. I think this could be a game changer if we do it the right way.
Stefan, anything to add?
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Maybe only one thing. We look into how much of an effort it is just to pull it off. We talked about that a lot, and if that makes sense or not. But then also think about, if you create a proprietary solution for yourself, you will need to maintain that. And that's even way more money than just pulling it off, where we're already struggling. But maintaining, you need to have software updates, software upgrades, safety patches, security patches every year. And if you think about the time span of a car, if you really want to offer a fresh car to your customer, that means you decide today to develop a new car. Let's say we are fast, we are more in a 2-year, typically rather than a 3-year window. Then we launch the first car 2-3 years down the road. Now I deliver that car, usually 7-8 years. Right? So 10 years later, when I started, I have my last customer buying a car. And that customer will say, well, I bought a software-defined vehicle car. I will have new features every year for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Now we're talking a time span of 15, 16, 17 years. Still one generation of car where you have to do all of that. For all the elements in a SDV, it becomes basically unfinanceable if you don't find methods to share this burden cross-industry.
I think that dovetails well into the question that'll wrap us up. While it feels like it's been months since the beginning of the new year, it's only January 7th, so not too late to set a New Year's resolution for the industry, for the companies, for the people that are involved in solving this problem. Thomas, let's start with you. What would your New Year's resolution be for the industry for pushing the software-defined vehicle forward?
So to make it very short and crisp for me, collaboration is key. I think if we collaborate together in this industry better, share the problems, share the solutions as well, we can make it much better for the entire industry because the problem is so much more complex than anything else, and no one can solve it alone.
Stefan?
I go in a similar direction, make, partner, buy. An real open dialogue about it. Certainly it's not how it's been and doesn't have to be. Certainly not where we're steering today. But an open dialogue where it's really the meaningful split between exactly those three: make, partner, buy. What do I need to do myself? Where do I need to partner on the long-term perspective? What are elements I just need to buy so that I have them? I really hope that the industry is moving more into this real open dialogue.
Great. Thank you both so much for your insights. Thomas, Stefan, my name is Molly Boygan. I'm a tech and innovation reporter with Automotive News. Thank you so much for being here today. I think we can probably hang out at the front and chat if people are interested, and hope you have a great rest of your CES.